Hi folks, I'm going to show how to modify a Lee Factory Crimp Die to make it crimp 22 long rifle. Now you can start with either a 22 caliber, some kind of 22 caliber like a 223 or 22 Hornet or just about any 22 caliber center fire. And this is a factory crimp die. You push when it's in the press. You put the shell in there. When it pushes up, it constricts, and those parts of the collet come together and crimp the case onto the bullet. Same way it works on a 22. Now this is a bigger one. This is for a rifle, but I'm using this for demonstration purposes. I'm trying to get the angle of the light right here. You see this area here is the crimp surface. On this one here, I believe this is for 270. This crimp surface length is about 1/8 of an inch. On a 22, it's got to be razor thin. It's got to, because 22s are crimped with a blade. So that's one of the problems you have. Another problem you have is when you buy a die to use. Now this is, I believe this is 17 Hornet, which I don't recommend. I had to modify a lot of other things to get this to work. You see, I have a piece of tubing in there to hold it out because it was too crimped, but I did get it to work. Figure you use a 204 Ruger or a 223. I would say a 204 Ruger works the best, but a 223 works well also. This is a 22-250, and this would work also. I could use this. Now, in order to get it to from that to what you want, where is that other light? What you want is that crimp area right there, if I can get it to focus, is just a bead. This area here where the light is sliding crimps to 224 or a little more. So it holds the shell tight when it's constricted. And then this top little bead pushes the crimp in. And I believe that dimension, the dimension of this when it's constricted, is 224, 225 or bigger. That's not crucial. I like to hold them because it makes them nice and straight, but they can dent, so you can go bigger with that. But the bead of the crimp has to be very small. And in order to get that wide area thinned, this is how I do it. I made this fixture, which is basically a 7/8 bolt, and it fits in this coupling nut or fat nut, and I screw these together. Whoops, put it in backwards. I screw these together when you push on this, it pushes up into there and crimps. It goes into that narrower section that causes it to crimp, or causes the collet to squeeze tight. Now, I made this fixture to where I can tighten this up. Now, I might have to use wrenches. I'm going to have to use wrenches to tighten that up. Bear with me here a minute. See if I can just use one wrench. Alright, so just about tight, good enough for demonstration purposes. Now when you put it in a press and you pull the handle, that's what happens. It pushes up on that bottom and it pushes it up in there and it causes that to constrict. And you'll notice it's a nice round hole. And how I do that is, remember we have to take this wide crimp area and make it smaller. One of the problems we have is even a Ruger 204, when it's crimped, only goes down to 0.253, I believe, and a 223, which this is, only crimps down to about 0.27. So in order to make that hole get smaller, you have to make these splits. You have to cut those splits more. And what I use is, this is a Dremel tool with a diamond blade. I fit it in there, and if you can't fit it in there, you can always poke something in there bigger to make it expand, so you can get the blade in there. And then back and forth, whoops, almost cut my finger off. Back and forth, I didn't really almost cut my finger off. But until you expand the size of those slits, and you want to move them down farther too. You want to get them down pretty far. Whoops, I didn't want that to turn on, it slipped. But basically, you want to cut those slits thicker so there's more room for this to squish. One of the problems being after that is when you squish them, because that hole is a bigger diameter, bringing it together is going to make it whoomp, 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 and it won't be round. That's why I use this fixture. It squeezes it tight, and then when it's squeezed tight, I take the proper size reamer and ream the hole out. Obviously this one's already done, but if you would imagine that hole squished down to where this reamer has to cut, this is the 224 reamer, 2244, 225 for all that practical purposes. This reamer is the same diameter as the sides of the 22 bullet. So you don't want to go all the way through. You want to leave the bead. Just leave that bead. And it's finicky work because you got to leave a bead there that's small, you know, a couple thousandths of an inch, few thousandths of an inch. The smaller the better. And when I get that reamed out, Then I'll ream to my final dimension, the final diameter that I want it squeezed down to. And this is a different reamer. This is 0.170 in the narrow area, and 0.194 in the, or 19 something, 189 on the hard heavy area. Now, what I do is, when I want to get the final diameter, I'll have to, cut those cuts so it'll squeeze even smaller than this reamer. But basically, I want to ream it out to about 0.19. So, the second stage here cuts it to about 1.19, maybe 0.20, maybe 0.21. The more you squish it, the tighter it gets, but the more chances are that it's going to leave those pinch marks and deform the casing. But that's how I do this. That's how I get the correct dimensions and everything on there. And I'll show you what one looks like after it's done. I have them that I've squished to different diameters. See the pinch marks on there? Now I believe this one, these bullets, these rounds, were crimped with that crimper I was just showing you, which I opened up more because it was making too prominent of marks. So these guys aren't crimped real deep compared to my other ones. These are only holding about maybe 25, 28 pounds of pull. And I like to get 50 pounds of pull. But then I get them big crimp marks. That's why I'm going to a different method. I may as well show you what I'm working on here. I've been working just today, in the last few days, on this new method. And this guy from Cast Bullets made this block for me, and he machined all the holes in it and everything. I just had to make the roller so far. Now, he made a different design that has two pieces for a wheel and stuff, and it would have been cumbersome. But I thought I could modify this, put the bullet in here, and these roll very easily. Okay. Put that in there, and then take a blade of some sorts. I'm going to use this as a demonstration. It would have to be a regular blade though. And then roll it on that crimp and have a jig set up so it goes the right depth and stays on the right in the right place. But basically roll that brass into the lead with that. Now, that's a better method once it gets perfected. It doesn't leave those crimp marks. I've been trying to figure out how to make one of those now for 3 years. And I've made probably 10, 12, 15 attempts at different things. This is finally going to work. Because somebody, kind person, took their milling machine and made this holder for the wheels, for the mandrels or whatever. And I have to make new mandrels. You can see they're sloppy, they wiggle this way. They got to fit in there just right, no wiggle room, and spin easy. So I got to make new ones again. But that's all right. So anyway, that's where we're at. Now, I wanted to show you one more thing here. Obviously, that's a lot of work converting those crimp dies. This was my first one. I made this before I had a press. I made this about a month into my attempt at making reloading 22s. Basically, this was made in a drill press. This was a bolt that I hollowed out, drilled out, made the cuts, and made that shape with the cuts, and made it fit in this little rig so that this pushes down. I haven't used this in 3 years, but this pushes down on that collet and it squishes it into the bullet, and it has the see that very fine edge on there? That's how fine you want a crimp. It pushes that crimp into the bullet. This is how you got to use it. You put the bullet in here, put the rig in the bottom, put this on top, and then I squeeze it with the channel lock pliers. And that crimps it. And it works just as well as that complicated system of modifying a factory crimp die. And I would suggest for Rodrigo to make this. Much easier, much less work. So there you are. I don't know if I forgot anything or not. If you have any questions, let me know. This is primed Ely case. See, it's got the primer in there. And this is the bullet, swaged up, ready to load. That's how they come out when I make them. Swaged with powder coat on it. Now, that goes in there. And this goes in there. Now, it's important to make these holders so they hold the bullet straight, because they can, if they go up in there sideways, they won't crimp straight. So anyway, this is in the top part of the press, and this is in the shell holder. And see how it's formed to go in the shell holder. And that pushes up there. And you'll see this is adjustable. So you can adjust the height so the bullet is crimped where it's supposed to be. And when you push it down, it bottoms out when the blades come together. When the crimp leaves, the segments of the crimp come together. Or you don't have to bottom it out. You can set it on the lathe so it doesn't crimp all the way in. And I've been doing that lately because I don't like the crimp marks. Don't like them.